Okay, hello everyone. Happy to see you. Let's kick off. Then my topic is about Azure and different services that you can find there. I will not be focusing on what you can install in virtual machines in Azure, rather just what's available. Like when you go to the portal, click add and what you can get there. But the main inspiration for this talk is that within Microsoft, there are many teams, and those teams sometimes seem to be competing. You can find Azure Machine Learning Service, Azure Machine Learning Studio, and I think that's an issue for us as a users because it's quite difficult to know how to start. If we look just on high level what we have, then you might ask, so how on earth ML.NET is different than Azure Databricks or cognitive services? So is it cognitive services used in Power BI? What the hell is going on? So in the next 40 minutes, I'm planning just scratch the surface a bit and go through those services. But first about me a bit. I work at Cognizant as IT architect with different clients, mainly in the Nordics, with finance, manufacturing, logistics. Apart of that, I'm founder of Vilnius Microsoft Data Platform Meetup, and I'm one of the organizers of Hack for Vilnius Hackathon. And the idea with Hack for Vilnius is that people gather around 100 participants. They gather over one weekend. They use open data available about Vilnius, and they code something. So one of the winners last year was application for, was application Tinder for pets. But here comes one trick that it's not probably what you think. It was about solving the issue with overcrowded shelters, that people can just choose their pet and go and take it home. Unfortunately, the app has some flaw because only people can go and swipe. Dogs cannot use their paws to choose their owner. But anyways, coming back, and sometimes I write one thing or two on my blog. But to keep it a bit less formal, this is the picture I took last year during the last year's presentation. By using cognitive services, I uploaded my image to take a look what properties I find there. And guess what? The first one is I'm getting colder, like I'm losing some hair. And then the question is, that was last year. What is the situation now? Unfortunately, it's getting even worse, 0.17. And if that trend goes like this, by my 50s, I will be like Jeff Bezos. I mean, bald like Jeff Bezos, not rich like Jeff Bezos. But now, and as you can already see, this presentation was not approved either by managers at Cognizant or by Microsoft, so let's enjoy. The topic, making data scientists productive in Azure. What I mean by that. Data scientists, usually I see right now in the market that sometimes even data analysts or report developers are being named, or job ads being published as data scientists. But I will not be diving in that. In the context of this speech, data scientist is someone who is building machine learning models. Let's stick with that. And productive? Productive, I mean this cycle. Can we find services in Azure that support this cycle? Is there a way to store data? Is there a way to prepare data? Is there a way to train our models and finally deploy? The problem is that we need to do that everything at scale. We need to be able to get data at different amounts at different speeds. Then for data preparation, different type of data transformation curation algorithms and logic that you would like apply. And on training, again, you would like to scale to hyperparameters. And for deployment, same thing, you would like to scale to host as many as possible readers. And there is another problem that somehow you need to log that and manage your machine learning models. So this is the cycle I'm going to use. Keep this in mind over all the processes. And by the way, originally this cycle was presented by Mati Zaharia in one of the Spark Summit conferences. So here are 6 data science stories. What I mean by that, within the audience probably we have software developers, people already working with data science, those already proficient in Python or R. We have probably people coming from BI, specializing in relational databases, or we have someone who is not yet allowed to go into Azure. So those are different profiles that I'll be using as stories for us to to look into what's available there. But all of them have one thing in common. One thing in common is an angry manager that is saying, I want to get AI by Monday. So today is Thursday, there are still some days left. Now, our first hero is software developer. Let's call him Tom. He is a full stack software developer and he got a task to analyze call center data, to identify unhappy customers. And in fact, this is one use case that we are currently working as well for one Nordic customer, is get customer calls, identify sentiment. But okay, that's an easy part. The more difficult part is that in addition to extracting sentiment, we would like to know if the broker was following the script. And that being said, at the end of each conversation, broker should propose a product, upgrade, or things like that. So in addition to identifying sentiment, we would like to identify if the broker was proactive enough. So in the case of Azure, one of the services that is kind of quick to start with would be Azure Cognitive Services, and you will find pre-built ML models there. If we look in specifics, we'll have vision, speech, language, decision, or search. So sentiment, that was one that we used not that long ago. Another interesting aspect was about legal documents. That's one project I worked on, specifically looking at legal documents for an insurance company. And the idea is, if you had, say, and I believe you did, if you looked at those legal documents, those are really advanced. And now imagine there is an insurance company that's insuring other companies. And those legal documents are reaching 500, 1,000 pages, and it's not clear what is actually insured. It's not clear who is responsible for what. So in that case, you could use decision models to extract what's obligations from one side and to another. And surprisingly, that works pretty well even for Nordic languages and for English, if you are interested in that case. But I encourage you going in those, trying for free. There's some certain amount of API calls that you can just dive and try. Key benefits, that's minimal development effort that you can easily integrate. There are many Azure apps that you can use as Logic App or Stream Analytics. You just use call API. And two changes that happened over the last year was container support, which is added, and Azure Virtual Network support. And this is really important for enterprises that would like to secure their APIs. In this case, security or GDPR folks will not say that you are sending data to some public APIs. But there are some limitations, and those two are the biggest for me. I'd say limited customization allowed. And to follow this what I said earlier on custom and sentiment, now imagine that there is English language and the sentiment model is built on the US data. And now in the US, if the customer is unhappy in the US, you will know that he's unhappy pretty fast. Either will be on the edge of swearing, or maybe he will just invite you to discuss something with the fists. But if we think about the Nordics, in Nordics, people are just a bit calmer. So if you just hear someone speaking a bit faster and the pitch is a bit louder, that means he's already on the edge. So even that's English language, but the sentiment score will be much different. So in that case, you cannot customize, you cannot train on data which is coming from different culture, let's say from Nordic region. That's one issue that we faced, that sentiment was not accurate for that. Then limited support for non-English languages. And this is mainly other languages that non-English, Spanish, those are still in preview and those lag behind. Let's say if you are interested in Lithuanian language, there is a company called Tilde which outperforms GCP or Azure in that case. Another case for software developers, I encourage you to look into ML.NET. And there were some questions already in Slido I noticed about ML.NET, people asking about that. But I'll just briefly go through this. This is not a new product. This is the product that Microsoft has been using for many, many years already. But it's a product that they released 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's starting to getting popular. What's interesting during interactions with customers, especially with architects, that always this topic comes up. Okay, now you are saying that we should learn Python or R, But what we should do with our software developers, we have 50 or 100 of them. Do you mean they should just forget C# and start going to Python? Oh, in a way, ML.NET is way to solve that. If we look from just high level how it looks, and you set up a context, you get the data. In step 3, you specify your algorithm that you would like to use, you train your model, and this is it. What's interesting that you could get your models from outside, because there is built-in on an X integration. So if models were built outside with TensorFlow, you could use this with ML.NET. So I think it's a great feature. Overall summary, one point will be high performance. Definitely it's faster than Python. AutoML functionality, as I mentioned, TensorFlow and on an X. And then exposing your models, simply you are building an app on top of that. And you're just consuming like any other API. And two below points that I find super interesting, especially from if we compare from the last time, is there is ongoing work for Apache Spark and to have .NET connector for Apache Spark. It's still on preview, there is still work going on, but I think that's super interesting. And if that gets in power and gets all the functionality, ML.NET will be even working in distributed manner, which is a great addition. And the last point, ML.NET, which on the Jupyter notebooks that was added in Ignite, I believe, where you can use your Jupyter, there's .NET kernel, and you can explore as you would use with Python or R. And definitely now having this Jupyter notebook makes that it's not only for developers, but as well you can explore that data. Considerations. All the data science tutorials are based on Python. So in this case, many great libraries are running in Python, but in .NET, it's still emerging. So you will find a gap, or you will have to rewrite some of the great functions that you find in Python. That's the limitation, at least I see. Now, going on to our next hero, which is a business analyst, data analyst. He doesn't know how to code, but he has good domain knowledge and he has basics of statistical analysis. So in his case, the product I find quite interesting and is expanding really fast is Power BI. And Power BI, if you think Power BI is just a reporting tool, so that's not longer the case. Power BI inside has analytical cubes, now has data flows, which it will get ETL. It has common data model, which is data catalog and tracking data lineage, and now AutoML, which basically gives that Power BI will just grow and grow and become the tool to go. And for software developers, that might be a bit not so funny, because Power BI is not so fun if you have to just to drag. But we already have a few discussions with clients in the Nordics, and everyone is super interesting, looking specific into Power BI and those new features. How it works in PowerBI.com, you select your data, you select what algorithm you would like to use, select column that you would like to predict. Sure, that has to already be pre-processed before that. And then what I found quite interesting was on the training. I see this for the first time, that on the portal you define not the amount of cores, not the amount of nodes or depth, but just the time. That, please train my model for half an hour, or train my model for 3 hours. Then there might be some funny situations, like how good your model is. Oh, my model is 3 hours good. I train it so long. Yeah, but I think that's a very great feature. The limitation is that you need Power BI Premium or Pro licenses to try this. Another great feature is top predictors. Previously that was called key influencers, if I'm not mistaken, which is really important if you are sending your predictions to the business and you are saying, okay, please call those customers because they have 0.9 prediction probability that they will buy our product. Okay, but what does it mean? In that case, those top influencers will be crucial for you, because it will show person is interested in that specific product because of those few features. And it works both for training data set and on scoring each customer individually. You will get that information, what features impacted the probability most. From the summary, You need Power BI data flows to try it, and you can deploy models as services in Azure ML, which is great. And as I mentioned, those top predictors during training and scoring. Considerations that as of today, the amount of algorithms is really limited, and you need to go with paid Power BI subscription. But another service that I find quite interesting for business analysts or data analysts is Azure Machine Learning Studio. And this is probably the service that, when it comes to Azure Machine Learning, been in the market longest. I remember when we started using this in 2015, that was so great. You just can drag and drop your models, input data. But as of now, it's a bit rusty, to say it so. But anyways, let's look into that, because Microsoft is having another product, which is Azure ML Designer, which slowly will replace this one, but still there will be drag and drop. But the idea with this Azure Machine Learning Studio is that it's visual. You can drag input, you can drag data preparation, you can drag from this selection what algorithm you would like to use, and you send your predictions to specific output. Then you can just visualize how your models are performing, compare those, and finally deploy as web services. So imagine this is done absolutely without software developers. You as business analysts, as data analysts, you can just have your models in production as APIs. Great things that it's interactive. You can have Jupyter Notebook, but with Jupyter Notebook you can just explore data a bit. There will be no, still you will need to do all the work via drag and drop, and deploy as web services and this integration with other Azure services. Then considerations. It's online only. That being said, that there has to be network connection, otherwise you will be not able to deliver. There's limited scalability, which is probably the biggest issue of this tool, that it's 10 gigabytes still per dataset. And even though when it's getting closer to 10 gigabytes, it becomes really, really slow. Then limited number of supported inputs and outputs. Those are only services available in Azure. And if you would like to write some custom Python or R code, there is not much that you can do there. Now, moving to our next hero, and here is Lucy. She is machine learning engineer, and she would like just to get a proper service where she could write code. And in her scenario, what she's been asked to do was estimate damage or repair cost in auto insurance. And this is one of the use cases that we've been looking as well, and it's super, super difficult to track. Because if you look at this car, and now how to track all the damage that happened to it. If your model just looks at the car and says, okay, lamp is missing, 200 euros. Okay, but lamp is not everything. You see the many things that happen, not only visually, but you need to know all the details of the car within the engine, what is the model, how much is for each price. So it's super difficult task to solve, and I haven't seen this working, though I've seen companies claiming that it works, but haven't seen this really working in production. But in that case, for such difficult scenarios, there will be Azure Machine Learning. And as you see, I cross the studio because it's another service. It's Azure Machine Learning. Previously that was called service or workbench, but right now that's Azure Machine Learning. And as you already can see, there are some difficulties in naming because it's Azure Machine Learning this, machine learning that. But if you hear about Azure ML, you hear about this service. This is the most expanding one, and this is the growing mostly. What it has Python SDK. That means you can run this locally. It has data preparation algorithms. You can send your computation to different targets. It could be Databricks or it could be some GPU cluster running in Azure. It has experiment tracking functionality, and eventually you can deploy to different environments like Kubernetes or else. We'll see that a bit later. So compute targets, as I mentioned, you can start just locally. In that case, if you are looking at the images, you're just starting with a few images, maybe you look locally, but if you would like to get some super computation, then you send that computation to either to Azure ML Compute or Databricks or maybe Apache Spark and HD Insight, which is still alive. And how does it work? Look from the code. On the line 8, you see that you specify what type of cluster, what type of VM you would like to use for your training. You say that this is the minimal amount of nodes, this is the maximum amount of nodes, and please train my data. And data should be already available in Azure to do so. And here is another thing for experiment tracking. What I say about that, what I mean about that, you can log different metrics, and you can log just metrics. And let's say at the line 10, you see that we upload, in addition to metrics, a model. Nothing fancy. But here, if you are planning to use this one, I encourage looking into MLflow. MLflow has more advanced functionalities, and you can use both MLflow for experiment tracking, model management, and Azure Machine Learning for computation and deployment. So those two work nicely together. And deployment targets, there is within this SDK, you can send your models to different locations. Either that's Kubernetes, or that's Azure Function, or even IoT Edge is supported. And recently it got new look. So in addition, what you can do locally, in addition, you can open the portal and you will see this AutoML functionality, or it has notebooks built in the portal. So it depends. If you would like to work just locally, go locally, but it has this new updated view in Azure. And this is probably the most technical slide, but this is the slide that was missing last year and was missing for quite some time in Azure. Meaning, is there a way to integrate Azure DevOps with your machine learning pipelines? And in this case, by default, you will not get any default connectors, but there is a way to write your custom code and integrate those. So in the example here, what you see, that the one part which is marked in red, it's the part where you define your pipeline. You specify how you will check the quality, what will happen with the pipeline, what steps, and then you deploy those steps, those machine learning pipelines to Azure ML. And now in Azure ML, here the training happens, and training can be triggered either manually, or when the new data arrives, you decide that. But at the end of this step, it gets pushed to Azure Machine Learning model repo. And that model repo, later, from Azure DevOps, it can be pushed to test, or with probably manual approval, to production. So this is the high-level slide that we've been using already. So there are many things that you have to define by yourself with PowerShell. But I think this is a good basis for you to, if someone asks, is there a way to have full DevOps for Azure Machine Learning? So yes, Azure DevOps plus Azure ML, it works quite nice. So summary, key benefits, that's central management of those scripts, run history. You can start locally, then push to Azure. Integration with Azure DevOps, and the difference, what happened mainly from the last year, added support for R, and they are working on this in Designer, which you will get drag and drop functionality as well. And from limitations or considerations, that I'd say when it comes to tracking experiments, think about adding MLflow in that. So those two get the best out of those two services in one. Our next hero is coming more from data engineering, and he specializes in Spark, and he would like to build data lake and prepare data for his data scientists. So in that case, I think the most mature service as of today in Azure for such kind of work actually doesn't, and the service doesn't belong to Microsoft. I think that's the one that's called Azure Databricks. And Azure Databricks is, we've been using that for almost 2 years in production. There are some ups and downs. Sometimes the Databricks portal is not accessible, but overall the experience is super great. And what it has inside, it has notebooks. That's one part. So here we see notebooks. You can write your code as it would be Jupyter Notebook. Almost similar, you have integration with Git. Another part is Databricks Runtime. Databricks Runtime, you get Spark images, built images by Databricks. So it's already pre-installed libraries, and you can just pick your library and enjoy what's already installed. Last year, there were some issues with already, was a question, can we install new libraries in addition what we have in Databricks? So last year there were some issues with that because once you install library, it might crash the whole cluster. Right now it has been solved because you can have just session-based libraries. In that case, many people can reuse one cluster. But usually we end up having separate clusters. I mean separate clusters, one for ML cluster, because eventually data scientists, they are not running only Spark. Sometimes they're running just simple pandas. In that case, you go with the bigger node that separates cluster for ML. And for data transformations, pipelines, there is a separate cluster for pure Spark workloads. So usually that's how we split that. And here's the portal how you can just create that. The great feature is about terminating after a certain amount of minutes. But be careful with that because I noticed a couple of times that this termination doesn't work all the time. If your query gets stuck, your cell is still running, guess what? On Monday morning, you might notice that your Spark cluster is still alive and you are still paid for the whole weekend. Apart of that, on the cluster, the images, new versions get released really often. So that's super cool. One thing on the jobs, you can create those workflows and schedule notebooks within Databricks. And the last part is probably the most important why Databricks gets so much attention, especially in Nordics in our projects, is by default you get AD integration, you get firewall, and there is Key Vault integration as well. So many things that come basically out of the box, what you need just to data. And usually within 1 month, data scientists at client location, they usually tend to be productive, having in mind that GDPR is in place and data is there. Key benefits, so in my view, that's the most mature development environment as of today. Looking forward to try Azure Synapse Analytics, but as of today, I would go with Databricks and integrate it with other Azure services and Delta Lake support. So with Delta, I will not be spending much time on that. And the idea is that's enhanced Parquet format. And in our cases, main differences where we see the difference is schema enforcement, schema evolution, and queries back in time. And this is important for models if you would like to see on what data that the model was built a month ago, 1 year ago. So within the same table, you can just see how data looked back then, which is super great. Considerations, again, that's online only, and it might get a bit costly. One thing to note is for production, don't use interactive clusters. Go with job clusters because those are way, way cheaper, and those job clusters are just fire and forget. That means your notebook gets executed and that cluster disappears. And there is one functionality called Databricks pools. That means your virtual machines are just waiting there. In that case, you are not waiting 15 minutes to cluster to start. So for production, don't go into interactive. It's too expensive. Our next hero is Joshua. What he says, I don't care about those machine learning platform as a service. Just give me virtual machine. I would like to explore new tools, new libraries. And there is another service which is not service or offering, which is called Data Science Virtual Machine. But don't get fooled, it's just virtual machine with image. And in that image, there is only pre-installed things. You will get Jupyter, you will get Keras, TensorFlow, everything there. In most cases, a bit outdated, you will have to update that. But it's, if you would like just to get started, especially hackathons, things like that, a few mouse clicks and you get image like that. And you just high overview what you can get there. And there are multiple images for deep learning, and there is one interesting image that's been released a while ago for ArcGIS, for all those geospatial transformations that you get inside that image as well. So summary, in this case, that's probably the most complete data science environment, to put so. You will get reduced time. You can access GPU, but GPUs you can access with Databricks as well. But the considerations that are that it's still virtual machine. That means you still need to take care of updates and firewalls and things like that. And it's online only. You need to go RDP. However, in this case, it's a bit to explain that online only. What you can do, you can expose your Jupyter via that remote desktop. So eventually you can just use Jupyter via a browser and computations will be executed on that data science virtual machine. And now, what if the cloud is not allowed? Because if you have health data, especially health data, in that case, you will have some problems convincing your security and your lawyers at the company that, oh, cloud is secure. So in that case, and we have another hero, our hero doesn't have access to Azure. In that case, I would suggest we go with Microsoft Machine Learning Server. That's another thing, that's installable package. You can install that in Windows or in Linux, and you get R or Python. Key benefits, that it's historically, that's been Microsoft R Evolution. Now it's renamed, not now, that was renamed 1 year and a half. But it's still, I see companies still using that, and you can just deploy R and Python models as web services at the end of the day. Considerations are that it's still, you own that virtual machine. You still take care of updates and all that not fun thing that usually infrastructure people take care of. And the last service, for those who don't have access to Azure, or maybe if data is already in SQL Server, and then the question is, why should I copy my data and move somewhere else where it doesn't belong? It's something called SQL Server Machine Learning Services. So it's built-in functionality in SQL Server. When the first time I tried it, it was quite ugly. Why? Because you had to take your Python or R code and put in the stored procedure. And this is not a nice way. But now it's been solved because you can upload your Python or R or even Java libraries to SQL Server and just execute that from SQL Server. Key benefits, that I think that's a great solution if your data just resides in SQL Server on-prem. You don't want to push it somewhere. And you just have pretty much function within stored procedure, you can call that, and you get your predictions. But there are some considerations. So SQL Server is the only database, limited scalability, and there is long list of known issues, and that means there is even longer list of unknown issues. But you could try that if you don't have access to Azure, or if production data is not allowed in your case. Now, the quiz, almost the last slide. So what's the difference between all of those? That's in order that we went through. So cognitive services and machine learning for .NET, those usually, if you are a software developer, those are great services that just to go for those. Power BI, AutoML, or Azure Machine Learning Studio. If you are from data analyst profile, those are great services that you could just get and be productive quite quick. Azure Machine Learning, it's where it's end-to-end machine learning in Azure. That's the product that many companies are now implementing. Azure Databricks, that's Spark. Data Science Virtual Machine, as you remember, that's only virtual machine. That's only image, nothing else. And Microsoft Machine Learning Server and SQL Server, those are the options if you are not allowed to use data in Azure. So overall, in this session, we just scratched the surface. But if you are interested in details of those, I hope now, depending on your problem or your profile, now you will know what you can Google in addition, what you can read in addition with that. Any questions so far? And by the way, this what I was speaking, if you would like to get the slides or just written form, I put that in my LinkedIn. So feel free to connect. Thank you.